Hey guys, this is Thomas over here at nursemoneytalk.com, and in this video I want to talk about just a little bit about if hospitals actually offer any kind of daycare or childcare services for their staff members, because I know that, especially being a nurse, that this is a very difficult kind of thing to deal with, especially since, like, as a nurse, and even it's not even just about nurses, just kind of like working in healthcare in general, working irregular hours can make it really hard for finding good childcare services. But before I get into that though, if you're not already subscribed, I want to go ahead and invite you to hit that subscribe button. On this channel, I talk about all things related to nursing student, and of course, nurse life. To me, dealing with childcare as a nurse is very much related to nurse parenting life. I just want to add, just real quickly, a little bit off topic, that being a parent, especially a parent of a small child, with currently what's going on, daycare shutting down, left and right for deep cleaning, too many people being sick or whatever, is just really tough. Definitely been struggling. If you've been struggling too, let me know how you've been managing to get through in the comment sections below. And honestly, if you have not been struggling, share with me what your secrets are in the comment section. I do want to talk about specifically though, if hospitals offer daycare or some kind of childcare services. And the answer to that is that yes, they do. A lot of them, or some of them, I guess I don't know like how much in the grand scheme of, or how many of them in the grand scheme of things do, but I do know a lot of them do offer some kind of daycare or childcare services. Or what you might see is that they'll, especially if it's a big hospital system, or if there's a lot of hospital systems in the area, is that you'll have like daycare or childcare services that independent of the actual hospital system, but that will be close by, that will tailor, that will be kind of catered towards healthcare staff. Now, specifically about ones that are attached to hospitals or that are very much connected to hospitals, I actually generally don't recommend using them. So I've had, and I'll get to that here shortly, as for like what my experiences are. I've worked with a hospital that had like a daycare attached to it, or I think it was like actually in like the next building over. And then I've also worked at another one or I worked next to a major hospital that had a daycare that one also had a daycare that was attached to it. And then there was actually like an independent daycare that was a couple blocks down the road. The reason why though I generally don't recommend using like daycares attached to hospitals is that, one, it can actually be at times more expensive than similar daycare options around there. And that's not always the case, and it's a little odd to me though that why it would be more expensive, but sometimes it is. And so if you haven't done your due diligence and you're under the assumption that it's going to be cheaper, or just by default that it would be cheaper, that might not be the case. So you should definitely do your due diligence before moving down that road. The other thing to keep in mind is that, similar to regular daycares or non-affiliated daycares, is that it can actually still be hard to get into. And so at times you can kind of be putting your name on a wait list and still praying and hoping that you get in. And then the third reason is that the daycare service times are not always necessarily better. And by service times, I mean, so I think most daycares, especially when we were going around looking for daycare options for our son, noticed that they pretty much were 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., some variation of that. And so what you'll find out with a lot of these other hospital, whatever, affiliated daycares or facility affiliated daycares, is that they don't actually end up service times being that much better. And at times they can actually be worse off, pretty much catering to like most daycares, to business hours. And so you can imagine that if you work anything outside of the 7 to 3 schedule, it's going to be really hard to make those work. Like, this is without even talking about night shift, which that alone is its own separate discussion and videos, and just how nightmarish that can be in terms of childcare if you work on a night shift schedule. Like, even a 10-hour schedule, probably a 10-hour day schedule, that probably is not going to work. And 12-hour days, that's really not going to work. And so that can be really difficult. And you would think, honestly, that hospitals would cater a lot to that, considering a lot of their workforce does, do work, kind of like these irregular hours, but that's not always the case. The last reason why I generally don't recommend going down this route of a hospital or a daycare attached to where you work, and to me, this is the one that most people don't think about until it's kind of too late, and that's that switching jobs can be harder, because if you think about it, switching jobs in and of themselves are already is already kind of pretty difficult as it is. But then when you throw in the I'm gonna have to switch jobs and then find a daycare, I'm generally not a huge fan of it, because I think already that too many people probably stay at a job longer than they probably really should anyway. And I think this is going to be the one other reason why, you stay at a job longer than you really should. Now, whether or not a hospital will let you keep your child there, or when you have to get the child out, whether or not, if you do end up quitting, that's probably that would be a conversation for the HR, because I'm not really too sure of that. But what I will say is that I think even if you are, for whatever reason, allowed, I think there's a lot of inconvenience that works with it, because, and I'll get to that though as I kind of transition to one of the perks of being of the perks of kind of like of a hospital daycare, because there are some perks to it. And I think it's fair that as I'm highlighting, kind of like these disadvantages, that I do kind of point out that there are some perks that will cause a lot of people to go down this route. One of them being that the proximity of the childcare service can be very nice compared, to where you work, and so it makes it really easy to drop them off. This makes it really painful if you end up leaving that job and for whatever reason you're still using that daycare, because then that can become problematic, because then it no longer fits in with where you're going. One of the things that I think about where in terms of proximity is that, obviously, depending on what job you have, like if you're able to step away to maybe check on your child, maybe during a break or something like that, if you're maybe breastfeeding or something like that, maybe there's something you can kind of work out with that with your manager. That's really easy to do if your daycare is really, really close to where you work at. Another kind of benefit to kind of arrangements like this, that at times it is cheaper. It's not always necessarily cheaper, but I think it is fair to point out that sometimes it is. And then one other perk I will throw in here, I don't necessarily care much for this, but I do know there's plenty of staff members that love the auto withdrawals straight from your paycheck without you even having to do anything. And so that could potentially be an option there. One tip though, so if you are a parent, one tip that I will give you when it comes to finding daycare is that I would recommend finding one that's separate from your job. And I personally actually recommend finding one that is not actually close or to your job, but is actually close to where you live. And the reason why I say that is that at any time you could leave your job, whether it's because better opportunities elsewhere, or you get fired. And so I actually think it's probably more likely that in some instances that you'll leave your job than you'll actually leave your home, especially if you actually own your home. And so I would actually recommend doing that. That way it's not kind of attached to where you live. So it's not attached to where you're working, especially even if you move anyway. So for instance, when we moved recently, we moved very close to where we were renting from. And so you can kind of imagine that if, going from my recommendation, which is what we did, is we got a daycare that was close to where we lived, we didn't really change a whole lot. Actually, our commute and our flow and whatever didn't really change at all. And I can only imagine how much more difficult it would have been if we got a daycare based on where we're working, and we both have changed jobs since then. But that's all I've got for this particular video. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment sections below. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you very soon in that next one.